Hi there, my name is Dobromir and I'll be teaching this introductory course on how to prepare a sales dashboard in Google Data Studio. I have 10 plus years of experience in the fields of financial analysis, accounting, audit, and for the past 3 years, I've been focusing a lot into business intelligence. Google Data Studio is a free-to-use platform that you can link to all various sources of data to allow you to present in a more visual and easy to read way. There's an ever-growing demand for business intelligence professionals and financial analysts who can present data in a meaningful way. Therefore, I've created this course to teach you all the basics you need to go ahead and start preparing your own reports in Google Data Studio. So if you're just starting out as a financial analyst or you have your own business and you would like to be able to know more about the numbers and what they represent, enroll in this course meant to teach you how to better visualize your data to support your business strategy and decision-making process. In today's modern world, reporting is an essential part of every business, but it gives no outlook for the future. If we only do reporting, we are already lagging behind. Business intelligence, or BI, is a mix of technology and processes that allows us to leverage business data in making smart, fact-based decisions. BI tools give us detailed intelligence about the business with financial analytics, summary dashboards, and data visualizations. The primary purpose is to ensure quick access to easy-to-read reports to support managers in defining the company's strategy. Business intelligence is not the same as business analytics. While business analytics focuses on predictive and prescriptive analysis, business intelligence employs descriptive analysis looking at what happened. Business intelligence tries to be more accessible to non-technical users, giving them simple tools to analyze performance data, while business analytics involves statistical concepts and requires more technical knowledge. Business intelligence gives us simple tools for performance data analysis to improve our decision-making process. It can help us with customer behavior analysis, competitor or industry benchmarking, performance tracking against goals, market trends analysis, operations optimizations, identifying areas for improvement, and many more. One of BI's most significant benefits is it makes data visualization more straightforward. Humans are visual beings, and representing data with visualizations makes it more accessible and spurs more discussion between team members. Before we implement a BI solution, we have to consider all the pros and cons. It can boost productivity, and once we set the reports, we can easily run them for different periods. BI makes it easy to track performance and enforces accountability to people responsible for the operations. It makes processes more visible and helps managers identify optimization opportunities. On the other hand, BI systems can be hard to implement and setting up the underlying data structures can be very tedious. Such implementations can become quite costly to small and medium entities. And it can become time-consuming. Some ERPs have tens of thousands of data tables behind them, and processing and setting these up in our BI platform can take much time. In the future, artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms will play an ever-increasing role in business intelligence, improving our outlook for the future and helping us arrive at better decisions faster. In the next video, we will start exploring one of the best free BI platforms, Data Studio by Google. Once you go into datastudio.google.com, this is the homepage that you see. It might ask you to sign in. You can just use your Google account. to get to this page. It might look a bit different in the future, but pretty much you have 3 sections right now, and the third one, we're not going to talk about it, is a beta. So you have all your reports here and all your data sources here. And you can see that they have some templates here. There's a template gallery, and you can see that they have a tutorial, some Google Analytics, Search Console, Google Ads, YouTube Analytics, pretty much different services by Google being used as a data source for Data Studio. You can create reports here and data sources here, hitting the create button, but it's much easier, for at least for our purposes, to create our data source within our report, so that way it's going to be automatically linked. So let's go ahead and just start with a blank report. Okay, and the first thing it asks you to do is to connect your data. There are a lot of connectors, so Google has 18 connectors as of this recording, and you can link it to MySQL or PostgreSQL to your website. So you can link it to Google Ads, to Google Analytics, but you can also have a look at the 292 as of today partner connections. So let's say if you do your accounting in QuickBooks, you can have an easy way to visualize your data using their connector. For our purposes, we're going to use Google Sheets, but the first thing we have to do is let's look at our data. We have our data here, and it's a breakdown of all our sales for 2 years. So it's 2019 and 2020. And it's a direct export from our databases. So this is the row number, the country where the sale was, the currency, if you want to see how much we're selling in different currencies, the value of the order, and make sure to notice here that this is in euro. So even if the sale is in pounds, this is the value in euro. We also have the gross profit, the cost, the date of the order, the category, the customer name. So we're pretty much we're selling to retailers. That's why you can see like 14,000 euro order on book. So this is probably a bookstore. You have the sales manager, the sales rep that made the sale, and also the device type that was used to make the purchase. And also the order ID, which is something that we probably won't use, because the whole idea of business intelligence is to be able to accumulate and aggregate data in a way that would provide us with some meaningful insights to support our decision-making process. The first thing we're going to do is go to Google Sheets, and I'm just going to drop here my Excel file. Let's open it and take a look. Okay, here it is in Google Sheets, and I'm just going to go to File, Save as Google Sheet. And this is the data source that we'll be using. So back to our report, click on Google Sheets. And find our sales export, our worksheet. You can see here that we have our first row has our column titles. So make sure that you click this, use first row as headers, and we can just leave that as it is. Just go ahead and click Add to report. Okay, our data is now linked, and Data Studio just went ahead and created a chart for us, a simple table, just to make sure that the data was imported correctly. We created our report and linked our data. Let's just go ahead and give it a name. Sales dashboard. This is your workspace, and if just gonna go ahead and hit the delete button to clear it out. So this is your Pretty much this is your report here, where we'll place our elements and build out our report. The first thing I'd want you to look at is that when nothing's selected, you get some settings for the whole report here on the right in the properties window. 2 tabs, theme and layout. As our brand colors are purple and blue, just gonna go ahead, scroll down, and as you can see, there are quite a lot of themes, and I think this one is gonna work best for us, royalty. You can go ahead, look at the themes. You can even try their extracting theme from an image. And of course, after that, you can pretty much customize anything within the theme. The other thing I want to do is I want to have our report more friendly towards mobile devices. So ideally, what I'd want to do is export this report and send it to the company's management on some regular basis. And I'm pretty sure that most of them would look at it on their phone. So this landscape view is not good for me and for my purpose. So if you go to layout, some settings for the whole report, header visibility, navigation position, if you want it to be on the top or on the left, display mode, actual size, fit to white, has margin, stuff like that. But what we're looking for is the canvas size. Right now, it's a US letter landscape. What I want to do is I want to make it a screen ratio, and I want to have it in portrait mode. So that's it. Now we have a page, and it's even more stretched out than a page. It's 16 by 9. Which is pretty much the most common screen size for a screen ratio for mobile phones. Now that we have that, another option that you should consider is the snapping. So you can either snap to smart guides, so it will try to snap different elements together, or you can always snap to the grid. And just gonna leave it at smart guides. You can always come and change it afterwards. And that's pretty much it. So now we have our theme selected because we wanted to match our brand colors, and we have our layout set up. So let's go ahead and add a small header just to get familiar with some of the tools. Here are your tools. So you can add new pages, as many as you like. You can always go back. You can add new data sources if you want to, let's say, have a single report with a lot of different data sources. And this is the most important one, add a chart. You can go through here, insert, and you have a list with all the elements that you can insert. But here you have them a bit more visual, so you can pick the look that you want. You have tables, scorecards, or KPIs. Let's say in ClickSense, they're KPIs. You have time series charts, bar charts, pie charts, Google Maps, line charts, areas, scatter diagrams, pivot tables, bullets, and tree maps. You also have some community visualizations, which are still in beta, and we're not going to be looking at those, but you can go ahead and test them if you want. And the next really important part is add a control. So here you have all the controls. So controls are elements that would allow the user, the one viewing the report, to manipulate data. So you can have a drop-down list for, let's say, having them filter something. Have a fixed size list, input box if you want them to input, let's say, a value. What you can do with that is, let's say, ask them to input currency exchange rate for their local currency so that you'd show them all the data in their local currency. Have some advanced filters, sliders, checkboxes. The one that's most notable and that we're going to be using here is a date range control, which would allow the user to select the range that they want to look at the data for. So let's say they want to look at last month or this month or last week or this week, but up to the current date. This would allow them to do that. And data control is another option that let's say you build a report that you distribute to all your employees, and giving them a data control element would allow them to pick their own data. If those are your team members, then you know that, let's say, they have their own sales in the same format. Each and every one of them can use their own sales data and have the same report but personalized to their data. Then you have some other elements, so embedding URLs, adding an image, text, some lines, and some basic shapes. Let's just go ahead and add a rectangle. Just gonna draw a rectangle, and you can see that it's not snapping right now. I would actually like it to snap to the grid line because it's easier to organize the things. So I'm just gonna click anywhere on the empty area, go back to layout, and pick snap to grid. Okay, now that I have this one, I can just snap it to the grid and make its size the same. You can see that this is just a simple shape, and on the right you have the properties that you can adjust. You can adjust the background and border, add some shadow, or reset it to the report theme. And this is part of our theme, this color, but I would like it to be a bit darker, maybe as far as this. The next thing we're gonna do is, and it's something that I like to always start with, is add our branding up here, so we may make sure that all our report after that, our elements are aligned with our branding and make a nice polished look for our report. Just gonna go ahead, add an image, upload it. And this is our logo, our icon. Just gonna resize it, place it here to the side. And now let's add a name for our report. I want it to be sales dashboard. Here on the side, you can see that you have the text properties, and I want it to be white so that it would pop up a bit more. There's this font here called Impact, which is really good for titles. And I'm also gonna make it a lot bigger. Okay, let's align it with our logo. Add another text box here, which would say Magnimetrics, the name of our company, Analytics. Now that I'm thinking about it, I would actually like to maybe in the future have more reports. So maybe it would be better if this here says Magnimetrics Analytics, or maybe even BI from Business Intelligence. And then I can have here on the bottom, I can have Sales Dashboard. Okay, let's make this one white as well. Make it robotic condensed so we can make it a bit bigger. Let's align it so that it starts at the same point. And I'll even go this far and put it like that. Okay, that looks good for me for now. Maybe just move those a bit to the side, and you can always move everything with the arrow keys, and you can multi-select pressing the Shift key. We built our header and our titles here. So in this video, let's start adding some elements that would help us visualize our data. I'm gonna go and start with some scorecards. Say scorecard and scorecard with compact numbers. So the difference between those is, and we can always change that later, is that this would compact the number, show it in thousands or millions depending on the size, and this would show the whole number. Just gonna go with a compact version, and what I want to do is always when I'm building these dashboards, I would like to have in this area up here the most important metrics portrayed as totals, as KPIs. Leave some room where I'll type in a title. Just gonna go ahead and make it about this big. Google Data Studio would usually try and add some data. In this case, it added our record count, 1000. And I know that this is true because we have exactly 1000 lines in our data set. If we go to the bottom, you'll see that we have exactly 1000 entries. Well, 1001 rows because our first row is our headers. I want to talk about something really important about your dates. And dates are really extremely important because it's the whole foundation of how Google Data Studio can show your values in different periods and compare them, let's say make a month-to-month comparison and things like that. And if you notice here, it says 4/2/2020 on our fourth row. And if I go into Excel, it said 2/4, and that's because my local settings, my regional settings are different. And for me in Europe, I have the date first, then the month, and then the year. Here, Google Sheets recognizes it and turns it around. So first it says the month, then the day, and then the year. And this can sometimes cause problems in Google Data Studio. And my suggestion is, if you're facing some issues with your dates, just go ahead and add a new column and format these dates the way that Google Data Studio expects you to format them. Back to our dashboard. You can see here that now that I have selected our first KPI, I have some properties on the side. The first tab, data, helps me with the settings of what data is to be shown, for what period, and things like that. And here I also have all the available fields, so I can drag and drop them. And the second tab is the style, and we're going to look at that in a minute. But first, let's look at what we have here. So first we start with the data source. We only added one data source to this Data Studio report, so by default it would always select it. When you hover it, you have the X here that would allow you to disconnect it, or you can just click and pick from all your available data sources and also some sample data sources. And you can edit the data source from here. The next thing is the date range dimension. So if nothing's here, then your date wasn't properly recognized. And what you need to do then is go to your dates and make sure that it is in the format of year first, month then with double digits, and then the day with double digits, and no slashes, no dashes. This is the format that Data Studio would expect you to have. And a way to do that, let's insert one column here and call it date processed equals text. You have to first select a number, and dates are numbers as in Excel. So we're going to select that, and then we're going to give it a format, and our format is going to be YYYY, and it shows you a preview at what you're going to get, 2020. Then I'm just going to slap which is the month with 2 digits, and you already see that you have 02, and then day. Okay, let's close that, and this will be our processed date that we can use in Data Studio in case it cannot recognize our dates. Now that we have that processed date, how do we add it to Google Data Studio? Because you see now that if we click here, we don't see it as a date field. What we need to do is edit our data source. You can do that from here, or go to Resource, Manage Added Data Sources. Let's just go ahead and click Edit. And here on the bottom you have Refresh Fields. You see that we have some new fields. I have no idea why those are changed, maybe because they moved to the side. Apply, and now you get your date process and it's recognized as a date. So this is something you can do in case your original date is in some specific format that's not recognized by Data Studio. Okay, click Done. Close this, and we're back here. So now we can see that we have 2 date fields. We can use our process date, or in this case I'm just going to leave it at our original date, which worked fine. After you have your date range dimension, you have the metric. So this is what we want to show, what we're showing. And in this case, we want to start with the total sales. Just gonna click here on record count, start typing sales. It wasn't sales, it was order value. Okay, we can always go here and see this is the column for total sales that we want to show, and it's called order value. Select order value, and you can see that automatically it says sum in front of it. And if you click that, you can edit it. And one thing you can do is change the aggregation formula. So you can have the sum of all sales, the average of all sales, count unique, the minimum, the maximum, the median, the standard deviation, and the variance. Quite a lot. You can change the type, make it a currency or numeric. You can also add a comparison calculation. Another thing that we can do here, and while we use it mostly, is to change the name, because this order underscore value doesn't look quite good. So just gonna say gross sales here. The next thing is we can add optional metrics. This would allow us to add different metrics that can be compared, but I'm just gonna leave it off for now. And also the default date range. This is the date range that it's gonna pick up. Right now it's showing our sales for the 2 years that we have here, 2019 and 2020. We can limit that either from here, clicking custom and fixing a date range, or what we can do is for now just leave it at auto, and then we're gonna place a date picker here. Remember our control, date range control. We're gonna place it here on the top, and that way all fields, all charts that are left at auto will just sync to this date range picker. So if let's say the user picks a specific month, all the charts will show the data for this month. The next thing we have here is a comparison date range. And for sales, we can have something fixed, or what I'd like to do is set it at previous period. That way, no matter what kind of period we select, it would pick the previous comparable period. So let's say if we pick a month, it will show us the previous month. If you pick a week, it will show you the previous week. And if you pick the year, it will show you the previous year. Right now, as we've picked all our data for the KPI, we don't have any comparable information. We created our first chart, a scorecard. Now let's go ahead and make sure that we can pick the data that's shown in this scorecard. So I'm gonna go to add a control and add the date range control. Just gonna place it right about here. It's a select date range. How can we interact with that? You see that so far we've only been looking at the edit view of our report. And if you come here to the top, you have this view button. And if you click it, it would switch to a view mode. And this is what users will be able to view once you share the report with them. And now that we're in view mode, we can click here and pick our date range. Let's say I want to look at this year. It fixes it from January 1st to December 31st. Apply, and now I only have the gross sales for this year, and it's showing us that we have a 0.2% increase compared to the previous period. Remember, we set this comparison metric to compare to the previous period, and as we have selected the whole year, the previous period is the previous year. Okay, I don't like how this is so dark that I can barely read it. So let's go back to edit and select it. And you can see that here we can have the default date range. Just gonna pick for that, as this is a sales dashboard intended to be used on an annual basis. I just wanna see this year to date. This would allow me to have the prior metric also be just for the same period. Let's say if it's 2021 and it's June, and I want to compare to just the first 6 months of 2020, we need to have this year to date. Otherwise, if it's just this year, then it will show me 6 months for 2021 and the whole 2020. Okay, and you can see that our data here updated automatically. But let's go ahead and fix how this looks. I'm gonna move to the Style tab, and the first thing that I'm gonna do, and probably the most important, is change the color of the text to white. I'm gonna leave it at Roboto and everything, and I'm just gonna add a border color that's just makes it a bit more prominent. Okay, I like how this looks. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and also fix the way our scorecard looks, because for me that's a bit tiny, especially that my intention is for this to be readable on a mobile device. So I'm gonna pick the scorecard, go to Style. Here you can see that we have the compact number, and this is the difference between our two versions. So that way it will show you the full number, and if you click it with compact numbers, it would combine it into millions. And you can also select the decimal precision. Let's say you can do 2 decimal precision, but I'm just gonna leave it at auto. You can pick the colors for the comparison metric, because you know that sometimes the larger amount is actually bad, so then you can switch that to red and that to green. The decimal precision can be picked as well, and we can show the absolute change instead of the change in percentage. And then we can also compact this number as well. And I prefer that for sales, let's say, because it gives me more information to be able to see by how much sales increased and not just the percentage. And you can also show the comparison label from previous year, but this is pretty much self-explanatory, so I'll just leave it checked. You can select what to do if there's no data, missing data, and there's so many options, and those options change for different charts, so we won't be able to go through each and every one of them. But if you look for the time series reference in the Data Studio help, you can read more about the different options that come with each chart. What we want to do is we want to increase the font size a bit, and 36 is good, but yeah, let's just go ahead with 48. I'm gonna expand this a bit just to make sure that it covers everything, and I'm gonna leave it a bit more room to the side in case our sales go into the triple digits. And if it's smaller, it will just overflow, and I'm gonna leave it some room here, so when I arrange other objects, I can make sure that I have at least this much space, so that if we go into triple digits, there will still be room to fill everything without it overflowing on top of other components. Okay, now that we have our scorecard and it's styled the way we want it to look, let's just go ahead and add a title on top of it. Just gonna go and add a title, and we're gonna name it Key Performance Indicators, KPIs. I'm gonna position it here and maybe a bit to the side. Okay, I want it to look a bit bigger, with 28. Okay, maybe 24. Yep, that's good. And I don't want it to be so visible, so I'm just gonna dial it down a bit, make it a bit more transparent so it doesn't take up so much of my attention. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and make it even a bit smaller. I prefer it to be Roboto condensed so that I'll have room to pile in other things. Okay, that's it. We created a date range picker to give the opportunity to the users to select the date ranges that they want to look at the data for. And we also went ahead and styled our KPI here, our scorecard, so that it would be more visible on a mobile device screen. I want to show a few more KPIs, so I'm just gonna use Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V to copy this scorecard. I'm gonna align it right about here, right next to this other one. And you can now see that it says gross sales again, and it's also automatically linked to this date range picker. That's a good way to reuse every adjustment that we made to this one, like font sizes and everything. So now we can go here and change it to cost. And you can see that just by changing it to cost, we have everything shown here for the cost. And I'm just gonna go ahead, click on the pencil here, the edit icon, and just say cost of sales. Enter. You can also notice that here it says that it increased with 1.5 million, and it shows it in green, but a larger amount for cost of sales is actually bad. So just gonna go ahead over to the style section here and make sure that our up and down, okay, that's not the same red, that our up and down arrows are reversed. So now it shows with red that our cost of sales increased. I'm also gonna copy our gross sales KPI once more and put it right underneath. And here I want to show our profit. Okay, and just edit the title. So the idea is to give users the opportunity to see, okay, we sold this much, it cost us this much to sell it, and we made this much gross profit. And you can see here that it doesn't quite add up. So this is 0.4, 0.5, and this is 0.0. But that's okay for me. It's because of the rounding that is going on here and here. And that's why it just says, it just appears a bit different, but it's actually our data. If you go back to view, you can see now that you can change pretty much anything here. So let's go ahead to this month, and it would select the month of November. That's it. We have everything update for this period. And you can also see that our change is now also adjusted to show the change from the previous period. So right now we have November, and we can see that it declined a bit from October. And it's really easy to check that if we just go here and adjust this to be October and apply. We can see that we had 4.9, and before that it had a decrease of 130,000 and was at 4.7. And the difference again comes from the rounding. Let's switch back to edit. It automatically changed that to this year to date because that's what we decided that our default range will be, the default date range. That's why when we're editing, it would always be this time period selected. Our next thing that I want to add here is our gross margin in percentage, but we don't have this data, and that's why we're going to go ahead and create a calculated field. We copied the gross sales KPI and transformed it into cost of sales and gross profit. Let's now go ahead and show the gross margin in percentage. Just gonna copy this, paste it, and move it right here. I don't want it to show the gross profit, but I don't have the gross margin in our data. So let's just go ahead and use this option here called create a field. Creating a field gives you the option to type in formulas, and you can just Google and read more about the syntax and about what types of manipulations you can do, but you can do quite a lot. For this one, let's just take a look at what we want. We want the gross margin, and the gross margin is the gross profit divided over the gross sales. We want the sum of the total gross profit. Just type sum gross profit, yep, tap to fill it. And this thing I want to divide over the sum of my gross sales, and my gross sales were my order value. So here is my order value. And here we can pick the type. So I'm gonna go to numeric and pick a percent. I don't want a comparison calculation, and I don't want any running calculations. Just hit apply and see what happens. And you can now see that we have 16.8% gross profit. I'll just give it a name. Gross margin. Hit apply, hit somewhere else to close that. And that's how you can take any fields from your data and add a calculated measure in your dashboards. If you want to change it, because if you click here, you can switch it to something else, but if you just click here on the FX button, you can always come here and change the function. Now that we have our KPIs to the left here, what I want to show on the right is a visualization of our top performing sales managers. To do that, first let's copy this heading and put it right over here. Type top 5 sales managers. Underneath that, we're gonna go ahead and add a new chart, and we're gonna use a Treemap. Just place it right over here. And I'm gonna adjust its size. What a Treemap allows us to do is illustrate data by blocks. So the idea is that it starts from the top left corner and it goes down by representing each amount for each, let's say currently it's picked up countries. The size represents the amount of our metric. I don't want it to have a country for dimension. I want to pick our sales manager. So sales manager, you can see that it automatically adds date as the date range dimension. And this is a good thing. If it doesn't pick this up, you have to go in and select it. Let's see what else can we do here now that we see our managers. You can see here that the metric is actually cost, and we don't want that. We want our order value to be the metric, and we want the sum of our order value. The total rows right now are at 500, and as we said here, we want the top 5 sales managers. So I'm just gonna go ahead and switch it to 5. Okay, now we have our top 5 sales managers: Celine, Otto, Maxi, Jessamine, and Clenin. I'm gonna leave the default date range at auto, so it's gonna switch as our report users switch the date range up here. And I also wanna enable apply filter. Apply filter is an interaction that allows us to use the data visualized here as a filter. So let's say if I click on auto vowels, it will filter all the data presented everywhere in our report will be filtered just to this sales manager. That's a great way to add more interactivity to our report and bring more value. Okay, let's go ahead to style. I don't want the branch header because it says all. I just don't want that. And also this scale, I don't want it as well. For me, it's pretty self-explanatory that from dark to light is how it changes. And this here is quite unlegible, and there's no way to change the color for only this block. What we can do is just change the max value to something more brighter. It's still visually representing the decline in value, but it's just a bit easier to read. Let's pick Roboto Condense to show a bit more from the names. I think that's pretty much it. So now if we hit view, you can see that once you go over, you get the order value in a pop-up. And the best part is that if, let's say, we pick auto, it's going to show us just the amount for him. Apparently, he didn't do very well this year compared to last year. To clear that, you can just click on it again. Let's present a time series chart with our sales over the year. I'm gonna go to add chart and just pick the first time series. I'm gonna place it like that. Okay, automatically Data Studio picks up gross profit and shows it per date, which is not the best look because day to day our sales vary quite a lot. The first thing we want to do is let's just change this gross profit to order value. So we see our sales. Now we have the date range dimension here, and the dimension is also set a date. But what we can do is, because this is a date object in Data Studio, we can go to edit here. From the type, select date and time, and down here we have month. And now we get the sales shown on a monthly basis. Let's go ahead here in our order value and just type in gross sales. The next thing we can do is fix the date range. So because right now, if we go here, let's go to view. If we go here and select a simple month, let's say this month, hit apply, then our time series here will only show a single dot for this month. And that's not what we want. I'm gonna go to edit, select our time series, and for default date range, just go to custom. Click here, and we want to always show this year to date. You can either include the current day or not. Since this is not a chart that would be so dynamically updated, it pretty much doesn't matter. Hit apply, and now if we go to view and we pick just this month, you see that our chart here still shows us the performance over the whole year. As long as we filter on something else, let's say we filter Celine, it would show this year's performance for Celine. If we go to Maxi, it would show us Maxi's performance. Let's go back to edit and let's adjust this a bit more. What I want to do is, I don't want to just show the sales, I also want to show our gross margin percentage. And to do that, I'm gonna add a metric, and it's gonna be a custom field, so create field. Call it gross margin. We're gonna use the same formula, sum profit. No, it was gross profit. Okay, over sum of order value. No, not order ID, order value is here. And I want to show it as a percent. Hit apply. And right now we cannot see it, but if you look closely, you're going to see a line running at the bottom. And this is because our sales are in millions and all our gross margin percentages are below 1. To fix that, let's go to Style. And here we can pick different options for different series. So our series 1 is our gross sales, and I would like to switch that to bars. So I have bars with the sales, and I want a line for our gross margin. So here for our gross margin, I'm just gonna move the axis on the right. So it's gonna be a different axis, and we have our sales here and our gross margin here. Next thing I wanna do is, I wanna switch it up a bit, so just use like a nice blue to show the gross margin. I don't want any data labels. And some other option that we can use is the smoothing. So if you want to have like smooth graphics, you can use that. But in my experience, this really simplifies the overview. So I prefer to have it like more prominent hard edges. Let's go back to data and add some comparison metrics. Comparison date range, just be previous period. Hit apply. And now we have gross sales in purple, gross margin in dark blue, and lighter versions for the previous period's gross sales and gross margin. Let's go to view and see how that looks. Say we want to look at Maxi. Just hit on Maxi, and you can now see all the performance of the sales manager over the last year. And you also get a comparison with the prior year. Going over any of the data points would give you detailed information, and this won't be filtered if you change the period. We added our time series to showcase our sales over the whole year. Let's now go ahead and add a bar chart representing our top clients. Okay, I'm gonna copy that. Just move it down here. Top 10 customers. Move it a bit down. And below that, let's go to add a chart and pick a bar chart. Spread it over like that. It linked our date range, but our dimension is date. I'm gonna switch that to customer. And now we have our customers. I want to have a bit more space here so that we can see the names properly. And the next thing I want to do is go over to the Style tab and limit those to 10 bars if they're not already limited. I want to add the data labels, so I have the sales for each customer. Sadly, there's no way to make those compact, and it would have been nice to be able to compact them. There are some workarounds where you can like edit the metric, divide it over 1,000, round it up, but we're not going to look into that right now. And something else that we can do here is we can reduce the size of the labels so they fit a bit better. It's going to give it a bit more room, and you can see that it starts to put the numbers inside, and I actually prefer it that way, so I'm just going to leave it like that. And that's it. That's how we can add our customers. Let's go ahead here, sales per client. As we already have that heading up here, just go ahead and say top 10 customers sales. We can just remove our label here. And to do that, our legend, just gonna go down here, and you can see it's now on the top. I'm just gonna select none. I think I can expand that a bit to the top and then bring it up a bit so we have some more room for other charts on the bottom. Something else that we can do here from the Style tab is add a reference line. And a reference line is a good idea when you have some, let's say, target. One thing that we can do here is have it be a calculated value or a constant value. Let's say we want all our clients to generate at least €1 million. So we can put this reference line here of 1 million, and it's easy to see which clients are struggling behind. Another thing that we can do is, let's say we want to decrease our exposure to single clients. Let's say we don't want any clients to be generating more than 2 million. Placing this here and maybe coloring it with something that would draw more attention, too pinkish. Okay, that's fine. And the label could be top limit. Now everyone coming in here would see this and notice that our top 2 clients have too large turnovers with us, meaning that we're quite dependent on their business, and management doesn't want to be so dependent. We included these top 10 customers in sales, and we also looked at adding reference lines. Just wanted to mention that you can actually add more than one reference line. So let's say we already have this one for our top limit, but you can just go ahead and add another one, and it's gonna be 1,200,000. It's gonna be called volume discount. Some kind of green. Okay, I'm gonna remove the volume just to make it sure that it doesn't cover the other one. But now what we have is a really easy and visual way to see which clients are generating enough revenue to get a volume discount and which clients are above our desired top limit. Let's go ahead, copy this title, bring it down here, and rename it to sales per category. An easy way to figure out what type of data you can show is to just go ahead and look at your data. So we pretty much used our order value, gross profit, cost, our date is intertwined everywhere. We looked at our sales manager. We have quite a lot of sales reps, so we're not gonna look at those. So the only things that are left are the category type and the device type. Category is important because it would show us at which area our business is doing well, and that's why we're gonna add a pie chart showing the percentage of each category. But we'll also look at the device type because based on the proportion that our sales get generated between the three device types, we can adjust our marketing efforts to focus more advertising on those that are doing well, or maybe focus more on areas where we struggle so that we can improve the performance. Back to our dashboard, I'm gonna go to Add Chart and pick a donut chart because I like pie charts, but donut charts usually look a bit better. Just gonna place it here, just shrink it down a bit. Okay, I think that's good enough. It picked our date range dimension, and we don't want customer, we want category. Category, it picked up order value. That's pretty much it, how we're gonna leave it. The next thing, I'm just gonna expand that a bit to here. The next thing I'm gonna do is just copy this whole thing over to the side. And I'm just gonna go ahead and adjust the heading. So this is gonna be device type. Here in our data, just gonna switch the category for our device type. That looks pretty good to me, but I also want to be able to filter all the other data based on categories and based on our device type. I'm just gonna go ahead and enable apply filter. That way, when we click on view, we can click on the different sections and it would apply this filter to all our other data. For the category, because it gets a bit smaller here and there are quite a lot, I don't want those to be clickable. It's gonna be harder, especially if people are looking at it on a mobile device. So what we can do is we can just go ahead and add a drop down. Go back to edit. Just gonna move this one up a bit. Maybe expand this a bit. Okay, and then add control drop down list. Gonna place it right underneath. Before I forget, let's go ahead and style it. So our text should be white, and let's see what our border was here. So our border was this gray here. So click that. Let's find our border, and I think it was this one. Yep. Let's change this here. We don't want it to be per sales manager, but per category. Okay, and I actually want it to be pick a category, or maybe even better, make it filter by category. Let's go to view. So now if we click here, we can pick any category we want. And we can see that here it shows the cost, but I would like it to show the gross sales. Go back to edit, filter by category, and the metric we want is gonna be order value. Let's rename it to gross sales. View again. Now we can come here, we see the gross sales as reference, so we can either tick this on and off, or we can select only one. Let's say I want to look at electronics only. Click here and I only get electronics. We added two donut charts to display the sales by device type of sale origination and also per category. We also added a drop-down and linked it to our category to allow our report users to filter on that as well. In this video, let's go ahead and add a new page where we can continue adding other charts, namely the Google Maps chart. Add a new page, and here on the drop-down you see you have the two pages, but because I want the same headers on top, I'm gonna go ahead and remove this one, and I'm actually gonna click the three dots here and select duplicate. Now that we have our duplicate, I'm gonna rename it to sales by region, and I'm also gonna go ahead and change the title here. I'm gonna leave everything as it is. I'm gonna remove our charts from here. I'm gonna leave the KPIs, and I'm gonna show you why in just a moment. Remove all those, or select multiple and remove them. What I want to do here is I'll have a map here on the bottom showing me our sales, but I also want to have some data on top of it. So I'm gonna select all of those holding the shift key, go to style and just make them a bit smaller. Then I'm gonna move those two a bit, pick those two and line them up here. Okay, now we have our KPIs on the top. Let's go ahead, click Add Chart and pick a Google Map. So this one will show us bubbles for depending on how many sales we got, and this one will just fill with darker color where we have more sales. Prefer this one. Let's just go ahead and drop it here like that. You see here we get an error because there's no valid location dimension. I'm gonna go here to the location, click on it and look for our country. Pick our country and it still doesn't fix it because our country is recognized as a string, this ABC here. So we need to edit it and select that it's a geo field and it's a country. Okay, and here we have our sales. Also, you can see here that the metric is the gross profit, and we don't want to do that. We want our order value to show here. Perfect. We're gonna leave the default date range, and we're gonna enable apply filter interaction, so when we click on a country, we'll see those KPIs update on the top. Let's go to style now. And here we can either pick a map or a satellite view, and I prefer maps. There are different themes, and maybe the standard one will be good here because it adds a bit more color. I don't want to see any roads, I don't want to see any landmarks, and I want to see as little labels as possible. You can change this here to bubbles. I find bubbles a bit harder to see, especially on top of a colored map, so let's go back to filled areas. Let's go all the way to 90%, so it's a bit more prominent. I'm gonna leave the colors I don't want to show the zoom control. I don't want to show street view, and I don't want full screen. We can show the scale if we want to, but there's not really a point for it now. Also, our color legend, I'd rather have it at none. We can add a slight border just to make it outlined a bit. Another thing that we can do is, I really don't like this harsh border on the side of the country. So if we go to style and go to the border color, you can just pick something less obtrusive. That's pretty much all the controls that you get here. And now if you go to view, you get a nice map. You can zoom in. And once you hover a country, it would show you the value for this country. If you click it, it's gonna filter only this country and show you the data up here. Something else that I would like to change is, you can see that if I hover over France, I get this order underscore value, and I don't want that. I'm gonna go here and change the name to gross sales. And there's also another option that would allow us to break down our tooltip into something. So I would like to go to tooltip and maybe go to customer. Okay, we're facing some issues here because our tooltip dimension has multiple values for the same location. So something else that we can pick is the sales manager, because it's a single sales manager for each country. Edit this here, sales manager, go to view. And now when we go on top, we can see the sales manager and the gross sales. Clicking would again filter. That's pretty much how to work with the Google Maps chart. We prepared our second page, sales by region, and we added a Google Maps chart. I want to show a bit more detail about each country and how the respective sales manager and the sales reps under them performed throughout the selected period. You can do that either with a table, but I would really want to add in also a separation by device type, so we'll know which country generates through which channel. And we can do that with a pivot table. There are three options for pivot table, so you can always switch between them from the settings, but you can either show just the table or add some bars next to each number. Or my favorite one is a pivot table with heat map. So let's just bring that up here and create a really big pivot table, because we're going to be fitting quite a lot of data in it. By default, Data Studio adds the country and our sales manager here on the top, so the column dimension. I want to move that next to the country, and I also want to add our sales reps. Okay, so now we have a nice pivot table showing our country, the sales manager, the sales rep, and the order value. Let's just give them proper names. And also add as our column dimension our device type. Okay. Our metric is order value, but we're gonna change the name to gross sales, so it would look better up here. And we don't want any subtotals, but we want a grand total on the rows. And we also want a grand total at the end on the columns. Here you can do some sorting, so descending, ascending. We're gonna leave it at descending because those are numbers, so we want it to start at the largest one for each country. We're gonna leave the default date range, and we're not gonna enable the application of filters. Let's go ahead to style and fix this a bit so it would look a bit better for our purposes. The first thing I wanna do is pick my header background color to be this purple that would fit with my branding. Then I'm gonna make the text white so it's easy to see. I'm also gonna go and the cell border color, I'm gonna give it a nice like pinkish color, and if we select something, I also want it to be highlighted. I'm gonna leave the labels as they are. You can just leave the heat map contrast as it is, and I also want to show compact numbers perhaps, because just too many numbers. And you can see that it figures out on its own that here, because we have smaller numbers, it's going to show them in thousands and here in millions. And this might be a bit misleading, so I'm going to turn it off, and instead of that, I'm just going to say that I don't want to see anything after the decimal point, so it's easier to read and provides enough information. And that's pretty much all the style settings that we get for a pivot table. And now when we go to view, you can see here that we have this really big pivot table, but this highlighting is really lagging. So let's just go ahead and turn it off. Go to style, go to highlight color, and just choose transparent. Back to view. Okay, now it's a bit better. The scroll is a bit slow, but we can just grab it from here. And that's our pivot table with grand totals for the rows and the columns. You can see here all the details for every country and every sales rep. The best part is that this is also linked to everything else. So let's say we want to look at UK. Just click on UK, and down here as well as up here on the KPIs, we're only going to see information about UK. This would allow us to easily focus our attention to specific metrics and use that to improve our decision-making process and adjust our strategy for the future. Okay, those were the charts that I wanted to show you. We finished our sales by region sheet, adding some pivot table functionality at the bottom to give us more detail when we're looking at specific countries. In this video, let's look at how we can share our report with others. If you go to edit here, you can go to file, share, and this would allow you to invite people and to give them either view or edit access. Make sure that those are emails with Google Access. So those can either be Gmail accounts, or if your company is using G Suite, you could also use this as well, because otherwise it won't allow them to have access. Another option is to share a link. And for this, I usually go to Google Chrome, because right now I'm using Firefox and I can see some issue here that my sharing options are missing. I don't know if it's something to do with one of my plugins or just some issue on Firefox or on Google's side, but just switch to Google Chrome. You can see here our report, and let's go to our page with the map. And here you can see our share button. So if you just click share, it will give you the same window. But there's a drop down here that would allow you to get a report link. It says here, only specific people can access this report. You need to change your sharing settings, go to manage access and enable link sharing. You can make it visible to anyone, make it editable to anyone, up to you. Another thing that you can do is just go ahead and download the report. You can pick specific settings, ignore background colors, and add a link back to the report. And you can even password protect it, which is pretty good. And just hit download, and it prepares a PDF file for you. Should only take a few seconds. And this PDF you can send to anyone. Just important thing to note is that it's no longer clickable, so you cannot change any filters, or you cannot click and dive into the numbers. it would look the way it looked when you shared it. This still has some benefits. Let's say if you want to share it with someone who doesn't have a Google account, or for me, this is a great option where I'm working on dashboards or on reports, to send that to my tablet and just jot down ideas on top of the PDF. Another thing that you can do, which is also pretty great, is schedule email delivery. This is pretty awesome because if you know that your report is edited at a certain interval, you can just pick this interval here. So you can say send it every week or every month after the new data is added. Or you can just go to custom and pick it from here with your start time and picking up which pages to be sent. You can even go ahead and customize the subject and the message that would go along with the email. And this is a really great option. As I said, if you know that the report is updated, let's say every Friday afternoon, you can have it be sent to your manager on every Monday morning so that they can go over and review the numbers. That's pretty much everything you need to know about sharing your report. Let's go back to Firefox and talk about this refresh data button. So by default, this is now linked to our Google Sheet. But what we can do actually is add additional data at the bottom of our Google Sheet, and it would automatically come up here as soon as we hit the refresh data button. That's pretty much the benefit of having BI over doing dashboards in Excel, is that it's much easier to update everything, because even if you structure your data in Excel properly, still you need to update some of the charts, make sure that they cover all the months. Also, some of the styles break once you replace the data. So it's much more cumbersome and takes much more time to update a solid looking dashboard in Excel compared to just adding your new data and hitting the refresh button. You made it. Thank you for joining me on this journey in understanding the fundamentals of Google Data Studio and business intelligence. I really hope you're now capable of start applying the knowledge you gathered within your work or your freelancing gigs to make better decisions and have better access to your data. Thank you for watching, and till next time.